Hello again, Steve Flanders again. Following talking about slavery and how local community moral self government probably offers the best form of reparation, I think it's important to look back at how bad slavery got and how elitism, that's going to be the subject of this episode, how elitism really made slavery worse when the elites found that the poor whites and the poor blacks were joined together in common cause in the South. I think this is the late 1600s. They began to separate them both legally. The indentured white servants were never enslaved for life. The indentured black servants suddenly became converted to lifetime chattel slavery. And in the education system, they used every means at their disposal to inculcate a deep racism. Okay, this is how elites operate. Now, elitism is a specific way of looking at things. Elitism basically says that only the elite, top 2% should rule everything. They're so smart, they should rule everything. Now, every society and every field of endeavor is always going to have their elites, their top 2% in any field: sports, arts, music, politics, business, okay, any field you want to name. There's always going to be some elites, and that's just natural course of events. But to take the idea that this small group of elites should rule over everyone else is what becomes elitism. And elitism is wrong. And I can show how it's wrong mathematically. Okay, I've got your handy dandy little A plus B is greater than A. This is in the natural. A plus B is greater than A, where A represents the knowledge and wisdom of the elites. B represents the knowledge and wisdom of all the people other than the elites. And when they're combined, by definition, there's going to be more wisdom and knowledge in all the people combined than there is in just the elites. So elitism is wrong just on the surface as a basic philosophical concept. But going further into the kind of elitism we have today, there you can see A plus B is quite a bit greater than A minus. A minus is the situation we have today where the elites in various fields join together and do whatever they can to keep the people down, okay? So they join together and really squander a great deal of their intelligence and talents and knowledge and wisdom to be able to accomplish that, keeping the people down, keeping everybody else under their thumb. So A plus B together is much greater than diminished A. But it goes one step further, and you could start talking about local community moral self-government. And that is, it becomes much larger, greatly enhanced. A plus B together is tremendously much better than A minus, the diminished A. This is the knowledge and wisdom of all the people, the elites and the masses together, is far greater than the diminished wisdom and knowledge of the elites when they're trying to keep the people bamboozled. And that's really the advantage of local community moral self-government. That instead of joining together with the other elites in places like Palo Alto and Los Angeles and New York and Washington, D.C., all these wealthy and the elites of various stripes join together and basically conspire to keep the rest of us under their thumb. This is why you're hearing political statements from, musicians and athletes. They're sitting at this table and they're basically under the understanding they need to do something to make their presidents felt to use the influence they have gotten because of their elite talent to keep the people beguiled, keep the people under the thumb of the elites. So they're sitting around in their fancy tables in Epstein's Island or wherever they gather, and they get pretty much informed that their job is to come out and make the right political statement, keep the movement going. And this subject kind of came up at the beginning of in the middle of the Great Depression. The Schlechter case was decided in 1935, and it's in the book, but one of the accounts in there was a couple of the young lawyers went into the robing room of the Supreme Court. Yeah, they were friends with, I think it's Felix Frankfurter. And he told them that, all this business is done. The centralization of government and powers is done. We're going to roll it back. But the deeper thing, he said, tell your young men to go back to the small towns they came from. That's where their work is. Well, that's exactly right. It was called the Brain Trust under FDR. And it was a whole bunch of very smart, young, elite people that got together and figured out how to run everything out of Washington, D.C. And under the American system, their job is really in the towns. Under local community moral self-government, the elites are embedded with and united with the masses. They're not ruling over them from D.C. and New York. They're living in towns with them. They see it their job as to educate their fellow citizens within the local communities about the big events going on, okay? And that's the A plus B enhanced, that the wisdom and knowledge of the elites is joined together with the people. And there's so much more that can be done with that. They're not spending a whole bunch of time trying to figure out how to bamboozle us and keep us, eating at their trough and eating out of their hand. And we're free to have the ideas that come up out of the masses be incorporated. The elites will still, because of international technology, jets, even back in the day, Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin spent a great deal of time in Europe hobnobbing with the elites and the intelligentsia. Certainly by the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century, people were going back and forth regularly to Europe. Today, because of planes, because of the information technology, those locally embedded elites would find it easy to maintain their international intelligentsia relationships. The people they meet at the conferences, the people they went to school with, they'd be easy to do. At the same time, they'd be involved with the local community and hearing those ideas and incorporating those into that larger thinking. It would allow us to have the local kind of self-government advocating without it getting out of hand, because that international and communication technology would allow us to exert a great deal of cultural pressure on localities that were trying to become oppressive. When things were getting out of hand, some local boss hog had taken over. We'd be able to boycott products down to, a particular kind of lumber coming out of a particular lumber plant and just let people all over the world know, don't buy that particular lot because it's coming from a town that is denying rights to people. With an aroused citizenry and an intelligentsia that wasn't fighting them, but rather embedded with them, working cooperatively a la the American plan, we would have a much better system, a much better chance of incorporating everything, technological growth and cultural growth in a way that is beneficial and peaceful. One of my personal examples of how elitism works, checking my time here, comes out of my own 7th grade experience. I was in a homeroom. I was supposed to be one of the people in the school that had a high IQ. There was another guy in the class that was definitely the top athlete in the school. And we had a couple retarded kids in the class, and this is a homeroom class, so we weren't really going to school all with each other, but we were in the homeroom, and that's where they drew the teams for the intramural competitions, and we were playing volleyball. And me and this star athlete were on the team, and we weren't doing all that good. We were okay. There's one retarded, I'll use that word because that's you can say intellectually challenged and okay, special needs. That's not definite enough. But he was in the class. I don't remember his name, but I liked him. But he came up and held his hands like this and showed me and Bob going, hit this. And we looked at each other, guys, what's this dummy? Well, the dummy kept serving well, but we kept ignoring him. It was after the game I started thinking about what he had said. And he was basically saying, form kind of a round platform with your right thumb and hand so that you can hit the ball and direct it. I've served that way ever since. If I'd have been intelligent enough to listen to this low IQ fellow, we'd have probably won that game. These elites labor under the presumption that because they're so smart, and they are, that they're smarter than everybody else combined. And they're not. I mean, if you're really smart, that's the whole idea, is set up a system where you can mobilize and engage the intelligence of all of the people. Because the little guy sitting over there in the corner, podunk nowhere, had been working out, planting his seeds and getting mostly weeds, but surviving and stuff. And he might have one thought on his mind that is really valuable. If you're a really smart, intelligent, elitist person, instead of saying, let's ignore him, because you don't know what you're ignoring. That's the point. You don't know what you're ignoring with your elitism, okay? If you're really that intelligent, you will figure out a way to draw him out, to draw all these people out. Don't set up these public meetings that are designed to be, gotcha questions and sit down. Draw out these guys. Maybe they don't have much to say. Once in a while, you're going to find a gem hidden among the mud, and it's going to really better the world. But if we're not that intelligent, if we're not wise enough to realize that we're not smarter than everybody else, then we fall for all this elitist schemes and we get beguiled by this phony vision of a future world that everything will be good because the smart people are in charge of everything. And aren't you lucky? You're one of the smart people. You're one of the people that's going to be in the bunker when everything comes down. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. The good government doesn't come from the top down and dictates to people how they live. Good government comes from the bottom up, from a people that have real power. And because of that, they have a much more clear moral vision and much more ideas formed out of personal responsibility and actual in the ground, on the ground, in the streets, living and finding out what the challenges are. When we can incorporate all of that together in a peaceful, orderly, profitable, constructive process, we will have a much better nation, a much better world. So, elitism sounds like an esoteric issue, but it's actually at the heart of what's wrong with this whole socialistic, fascistic form of government. They're all elitists. We had elitists in this country at the very beginning of the country. Look at the conflict between Hamilton and Jefferson in that regard. The Federalists and
we're at this stage again. Once again, the blog site is lifeinafascistcountry.blogspot.com. You have that one that covers the whole book. In fact, this latest entry is 2025/02/elitism.html. We've gone all the way from the invention of the telegraph, corporate personhood, the way that started perverting the culture, and the way the elitism, the government by experts started perverting the culture, more elitism, more twisting of the culture out of all recognition. Then they went with the twisting of the First Amendment, and pretty much everything of the American society consisted of with local community moral self-government was taken from us by the 1960s. And we explored the lost blessings of liberty. And this last one, number 17, we talked about number 16, how local community moral self-government would help everyone, including kind of a reparations for slavery. And this time we went into elitism. Next time we'll start talking about the actual reforming and refounding and how we can go about that. And then how we can do one thing to make it where we can actually get that done. Be sure and share this and talk to your friends about it. See you next time.